Describe the GoApe system, Rick says. The GoApe system is based on 3 elements, okay? The first one, which is, there's a video on my website, is tuning 2 strings at once. Now, when you think about tuning 2 strings at once, you might have a couple of different questions about it. First of all, is how is it possible to tune 2 strings at once? It's impossible, right? And when you ask that question, then you're thinking of tuning 2 strings at once, like playing an A4 and then playing an A3, 2 strings, and listening to A3 and A4 together and moving the 2 strings at once. And some people get confused by that. That's not how it's worked. That's not how you do it. You have the A4 and you got your A3, 2 strings, and the first step is you have to tune it so that both strings make a clean single unison sound. Okay? Now you got your A4. It could be a trichord, and you got your A3. And now you make a judgment. And how you make the judgment is by depends on the criteria you're using. But let's say, just for the sake of description, that your criteria is that you want to tune a pure 4/2. So in that case, we're going to take the F3, play it with the A3, and then play it with the A4, and that's the major third, major 10th test. And if those 2 beat speeds are the same, you have a pure 4/2. But let's say it's a wide 4/2. That means you have to raise the A3. This is how you do it, and this is the power of the double string unison. You take 1 string and you move it up a tiny bit until the sound of the out of tune unison tells you that you've gone the distance that you want to go. And that comes from experience, from just trying it out. And you learn really quickly how much is too much. So once you move that 1 string, then you move the other string to put it back as a clean unison. Then you measure it again with the A4 using the F3, major third, major 10th. You just compare and you keep going back and forth. Very, very accurate. You can make small changes in pitch down to 1/2 cent or less and be able to hear it. You can't do that with a single string. When you take a single string and change its pitch, it has to change by over 3 cents before you even notice it. But you could say, and people do say, we don't use beat speeds like major third, major 10th. Just tune the stupid octave until it sounds good. Well, there's a couple of things with that. Tuning the octave just so it sounds good has one positive thing to it, and that is you don't have to learn about checks and quintilental partials. You know, it's just do it, man. Just do it. But the problem is it has a large range of results. If I took a bunch of piano tuners and said, just tune this octave on the same piano, same strings, and tune the A3, A4 without listening to any other check notes, just tune it until you think it sounds the best, and measure them, there would be a wide range. If you took 1 tuner and had him tune the octave over and over again, you'd have a wide range of actual octave sizes. This is what I found from doing studies, not just thinking about it, but asking people to go online, take this octave and tune it, and tell me what note you tuned it to, which one. And there's different numbers for the different notes that they chose as the best. So that's a problem, because when you have that error just in the middle octave there, and then you use those notes to tune another octave up, again, with no beat speeds, just listening directly to the octave, there's cumulated error. And the next octave, more error. And the next octave, more error. And that error is multiplied. And usually what happens is the error is in one direction, and that is we tend to make the octave smaller than it should be to have a great sounding stretch. So what you'll find is if you start using pure 12ths, and the test for the pure 12th is the major 6th and the major 17th. So let's say you're doing A to E. So a major 6 would be C to E. Sorry, C to A, that's the major 6th. And then the 17th is just 2 octaves and a major third, so C to E. So when you play those speeds, this is what happened to me. when I first started learning about the pure 12th, I would use the test and it would be like, whoa, the 17th is so much slower. I could hear it. But when I just played the octaves, I was like, oh, they sound fine. But the speeds told me they weren't good enough. So with that in mind, the only negative to the double string unison is that you can't tune the intervals in real time. You can't play the A3, A4 and move the A3 while listening to the octave and say to yourself, oh, that sounds great. You can't do that. And what I've just hopefully explained to you is that you don't want to do that if you want to tune with a high accuracy. If you want to do concert tunings, that's not going to do it for you. You're going to have to add other things. And if you're not using a double string unison, then you're doing a lot of tweaking, and a lot of great tuners will use the double string after they do a regular tuning to correct different notes, and that's called unison shimming or cracking the unison. Virgil Smith was the first one to talk about that. Another thing about the double string unison is that the hard part of it is to get that unison, the double string, to get it to be clean. And then when you have to move it, you got to make it out of tune and then clean again. Uh-oh, we got to move it again? Oh no, move it. Uh-oh, now clean again. And every time you move the double string unison, you have to tune a clean unison when you're finished. Very hard, very frustrating. And also, what if after you finish tuning this double string unison and you're using it and listening to it, what if it goes out? Frustrating. So two really frustrating things that in your mind might be saying, I do not want to tune that way. That's stupid. That's ridiculous. That's craziness. Having to tune a unison every time I want to move a note, and then if my stability is not good, it goes out and then I can't use it, because those double string unisons, they have to be really clean or they won't be usable. You'll play the major third, like a A3, that's a double string unison with the F3, and you'll be trying to hear the beats, and the darn A3 is not clean enough. You can't hear the beats. So it's frustrating, and you might be saying to yourself, there's no way I would use a double string unison. That's craziness, because it's so hard and frustrating. Well, what makes it so hard and frustrating? Tuning clean unisons quickly? Having unisons that stay in tune over time? Oh, why? Are you making the connection here? Suffer through it. Figure it out, For me, I love it because I knew I had to practice unisons. I knew that's my weakest part of tuning, unisons. And I knew I had to work on it. But I didn't want to, right? I'm lazy. I'm a lazy person. I didn't want to work on it. And if you're working on it, you're not working. Do you know what I mean? You're not making money. You're at home working on a practice piano or something. But with this method, it slowed me down. When I started doing it, using double string unison, it was taking me 2 hours to tune a piano. That's a long time for me. But I was getting better at unisons. Much better and much faster. So there's a payoff. There's that payoff. And I love it for teaching beginners, because with beginners, if I didn't have the double unison, I would be saying, you got to practice your unisons. You've got to practice your stability. But would they? Human beings are who they are, right? Would they actually do it? Now I say, here's the double string unison method, and this is how you use it. And then they come to me and say, oh, wow, man, my stability was horrible. I had to keep working on it. Or my unisons, I couldn't hear the beats until my unisons were really clean. And I'm like, interesting. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know what you need to do, but if you want to use the other way, the other thing is there's so many benefits to double string unison that I can't even mention them all. The double string unison, the bichords are already double string unisons. You don't have to use a mute. So that's the double string unison. The second element of the Go 8 system is the non-speaking length tension analysis, which is the string between the tuning pin and the V-bar. That part of the string, the tuning pin's up here, okay? That tension right there, okay? We analyze what we're doing and imagine how it's affecting that tension, and we know where we need to leave that tension. So basically how it works is this. You've got, let's say this finger represents the non-speaking length tension. So when I put my hammer on the pin and I start moving the pin, the tension's going up and down right away. There's nothing to stop it. But because of the friction at the V-bar, the pitch does not go up and down right away. So I could be doing this with the non-speaking length tension, up and down, and the pitch is not moving at all. That's very common. It's not until I break the friction that the strings start sliding and this tension changes. And then if I loosen it up, it won't move until I get enough difference in the tension that it drags the string across, okay? So that creates what I call the tension band, where the non-speaking length tension is allowed to move inside this band and results in a stable pitch. Okay? So if you want to move the pitch, you got to change the friction or the tension so much that it breaks the friction and drags the string. If you want to lower the string, the pitch, you have to break the friction and have it drag down. Okay, so now that's an interesting model, but the model is not complete, because if I leave the non-speaking length tension within the tension band, why does it go out of tune when I hit it hard? There's two other ideas we have to talk about. And one is dynamic and static friction. So static friction is the friction between my hands when my hands aren't moving. Once I start moving my hands, there's friction between my hands, but that friction drops. It's less. That's a standard engineering principle. It's the reason why we have ABS brakes. When you slam on the brakes, the wheels lock up and the wheel slides on the ice. You'll lose control because there's no friction stopping you, you know? So that's why the pumping of the brakes with the ABS causes every once in a while the wheel to start turning again and engaging with the road so it's not slipping, okay? So how do we use that with the tension band? Well, if this is the friction, when we play the note really hard, the string is moving at the V-bar and the friction reduces. So on hard blows, the friction reduces. And that's why if you leave the non-speaking length tension too high or too low, on a hard blow, the string will slip. All right? So that idea has a lot of merit for a lot of people who think that the tension across the V-bar needs to be equalized. And if you think about it, well, how can we equalize the tension across the V-bar? I got a bunch of questions here. I'm trying to get your feed to scroll up. Hello, Steve. How are you doing? So the question is, how do we get the tension? Now, listen, I'm going to just say this. A lot of things I say, some people, because of their core beliefs, they've been believing these things for years, they cannot accept it. Okay? They can't accept it. If you've been tuning for a long time, some of the stuff I say you will just not believe. Even if I was to measure it and give you data to prove it, you wouldn't believe it because your core beliefs are too strong. That's called the Semmelweis reflex. Semmelweis was a doctor who went into a Viennese hospital in the 1700s, and there was these women who were dying in childbirth, and he said, you know what? Let's wash our hands. And the doctors, they did this experiment with him, and it was, I think it was a 5 times drop in the number of deaths of mothers. And so he said, that's it, we got to wash our hands. And the doctor said, we're gentlemen. We don't have dirty hands. We don't have to wash our hands. And it took about 20 years before this practice of washing hands was common amongst the hospitals. In that time, you know, we're not talking about mothers and childbirth here, but what I'm saying is some of the things I'm saying, if you have core beliefs, you're going to have a hard time believing them. And this next thing is one of them. And that is the idea of equalizing tensions across the V bar is so common. I believed it. And then you say, well, how can we do that? And it's easy. You just whack the string really hard, and that will equalize the tensions across the V bar. It makes sense, except it's wrong. How can I say that? Well, when you hit the string really hard and you look at the string, you can see it moving, right? This is a simple idea. It's moving. Well, if it's moving, how does that affect the tension? The ends are fixed. The string is moving, which means it's longer. If the ends are fixed and the string is longer, the tension must be higher. And these things work together to keep the pitch the same. A longer string should be a lower pitch, but a higher tension would make it a higher pitch, and these cancel each other out. Part of the reason, I think, why the pitch is not consistent. When you look at an ETD, it's fluctuating up and down. Okay, so if we have a higher tension in the speaking length when we're hitting it really hard, then that's the tension that's equalized during the hard playing. For example, here's the non-speaking length tension, and here's the speaking length tension. Play it really hard, it will go up, and the tension will equalize at this higher tension during a hard blow. But then when you're done the hard blow, the tension will drop and the non-speaking length tension will stay high because of the friction at the V-bar. So this is the situation that's created across the V-bar when we use hard blows. A higher tension. And indeed, that's the best place to put the tension, high. You want the tension high. This is an idea that I've heard spoken to me by concert technicians when I was starting out, that we wanted to keep the tension high. And other technicians like Isaac Oleg has talked about loading the tuning pin. So this is another way of thinking of the tuning pin, pulling back on that non-speaking length tension to keep it high, the tension high. High in the tension band. So what that means is the tension band, when we play really hard, does two things. One, the friction drops. And two, it rises. The tension rises, or the pitch rises. Not the pitch, because it's longer, so it counteracts, but the tension rises. So we end up with this thing. Okay? Which results in the idea of having equalized tensions. This is equalized tensions, producing an unstable pitch. This is equalized tensions. It's right in the middle of the tension band. But when you play it really hard, the friction drops, the tension goes up, and pulls the string, pulls the pitch down. Okay, so that's the second element, understanding the non-speaking length tension and how to use it, you know. And the third element of the Go-A.P.E system is the bisecting beat speed tension analysis, bisecting beat speed windows temperament sequence. So when I used to tune my temperament, it really frustrated me that I'd have to keep correcting, you know, like, is that right? Like, how come I have to correct? Like, I was told I have to set F3 to A3 at 7 beats per second. Well, how come it doesn't fit? You know, frustrating, you know? So that got me on a journey of figuring out what was going on. And the first thing I realized was that one temperament sequence cannot work on all pianos. So I've broken it down into 3 different temperament sequences, and they depend on the inharmonicity of the piano. So the first thing that I do is I measure the A3, A4 octaves inharmonicity orally. How do I do that? I tune a pure 4-2, and then I listen to the 6-3, or I measure the 6-3. So I tune a pure 4-2, not by playing the octave and listening to the 4-2 and saying, oh, the 4-2 has disappeared. No, that is not accurate enough. You have to use the beat speeds, major, third, major, 10th. You have to use them. They are more accurate than listening by ear because slow beats are harder to set. I know a lot of people are really big on fourths and fifths, and I love them too to check my temperament. But when you're trying to set them, it's very, very hard because, like, if you're trying to tune a pure 4-2 and you play it and you hear ya, how do you know that's not the beat? You know, it sounds just, is it a decrescendo? is the note just dying out, or is that the beat, the end of the beat? You know, I'm trying to do pure. So most accurate is major third, major 10th. So once I tune that, I know it's a pure 4-2. Then I'll measure the 6-3 and different things I will find. Maybe I will find the 6-3 sounds pure as well. Maybe I'll find that the 6-3 is narrow. And maybe I'll find that the 6-3 is really narrow. And I can tell because the difference in the minor third, major 6, that's the test for the 6-3, is huge. Those are 3 different inharmonicities for the A3, A4. And depending on which inharmonicity this particular piano has, it will tell me which temperament sequence I'm going to use. 3 different temperament sequences, each one designed specifically for a piano. What this means is that the steps I'm using to tune the notes are highly accurate, more accurate than just any temperament sequence for all pianos. Like you might have a temperament sequence that really works well for only one kind of piano. But if you use it on another kind of piano, it's like, when you're finished, you're going, what the heck is going on here? But the sequence that you choose for that specific piano is so accurate that when I find a note or an interval that doesn't fit, and we've all had that happen, right? When you find an interval that doesn't fit, what I used to do is go check a whole bunch of different intervals over and over, this, that, and the other thing. But now I just check it the way it was tuned. I'll go back and, how did I set this note? Oh, it was like this. Oh, it doesn't fit anymore. Fix it, then go back to see your original problem you had is gone. So those are the 3 things. Double string unison, non-speaking length tension analysis for improved stability, and being able to make small changes in the pitch, which we need if we've got the double string unison. That thing works in less than half-cent increments. You really have to have a very fine way of changing the pitch by a small amount. And the windows, the beat speed windows, that's a really quick way of explaining it. I know it took a long time, but there's a lot of other things involved.